Hey everybody, my name's Ryan, and here at eTrailer we install, test, fit, and review a lot of different parts. That way we could try to answer any questions those of you might have. And that's exactly what we're doing here today on our 2014 Buick Enclave. We're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms. So there's going to be a total of 5 main components needed to flat tow your Buick down the road safely. First one's going to be the base plate. That's going to provide us with that solid and reliable connection point. That way we can hook up a tow bar to it. So that tow bar would get connected to the base plate and actually go to the back of your motorhome. That's going to be that physical link that's actually carrying or pulling, rather, your Buick behind your motorhome. The third main component is going to be tow bar wiring, which is this connector here. So this is going to transfer the lighting signals from the back of your motorhome to the back of your Enclave, and that's going to help keep you safe and legal. Another main component is going to be safety cables. So safety cables are going to hook to your base plate here at the front of your Buick and go to the back of your motorhome's hitch, and they're there in the event of a unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything connected together and keep you safe. And last but not least, we're going to have a braking system, and that braking system is going to apply the brakes inside of your SUV whenever you apply the brakes in your motorhome. And that's just going to really help bring you to a more predictable stop. So this is what the base plate is going to look like whenever you're not using it. Now, in my opinion, definitely is noticeable, but I really don't think it is a big eyesore. Whenever you look at it, everything is neat and organized, and it appears as if everything has a purpose, which goes a long way. Now, something that's pretty nifty is it actually comes with some caps, and this is a small detail, but honestly a pretty important one, I think, not only for the looks of it, but whenever you're driving around town and you have these caps in, you're not going to have to worry about dirt or debris, or more importantly water and moisture getting inside of here. That way they'll stay in good shape and operate the way they should even after years of use. One thing that does make life a little bit easier, especially when you're putting this all together, is the fact that the electrical bracket is already attached to the base plate. So they figured out a good spot for you to mount it, and makes it really easy. You don't have to try to fabricate or customize anything. You just bolt it right on there. So really convenient. They also give you a bracket as well for your breakaway switch. In our case, we don't have to use it, but it's always nice to have just in case if your application will need it. So I will say, talking to a lot of our customers, one of their biggest concerns, especially if they're new to flat towing, is making sure they have everything hooked up right, which is definitely understandable, and make sure everything is solid. And that's what the base plate is going to do. It's going to provide us with that good connection point. Now, when you are ready to hook up, it's going to be super easy, so you're not going to have to be overwhelmed by that process. What you're going to do is just pull your plug out, and the removable arms are simply just going to more or less slide into place. So you're going to slide this in, rotate it a quarter turn until this pin lines up with there. So when that happens, this is going to act as a catch, and it's not going to let these arms come out. So you can see you can depress it, locks into place, and that thing isn't going anywhere. It's nice and secure. Same thing for the one on the other side. And you can see how fast it is. Just takes a couple of seconds. You pop them in there and you're good. So from there, you would just hook your tow bar up with the quick connects. This will work with all Blue Ox tow bars. And if you have a different brand of tow bar, chances are really good you can pair those together as well. We offer a lot of different adapters here at eTrailer that you can find. Now, as far as the safety chain openings go right here, in my opinion, they have their pros and cons. I think the con, it could have sat back a little bit further to maybe kind of help clean up the install look, but the pro, the benefit to coming out a little bit further is it's super easy to get to and super easy to hook up. You're going to have a ton of space. So whenever you take your safety chain hook, you're going to have no issues getting it wrapped on there and secured down. So at the end of the day, the base plate is going to get the job done and provide us with that real solid connection point That way we can pull our nice Buick behind our motorhome down the road safely and be able to enjoy yourself whenever we get to those destinations that we're heading to. Now, as far as the installation goes, I'm not going to lie, it is relatively involved. You do have to take the front fascia off and do a little bit of drilling, but as long as you stay patient, you should be able to get the job done at home. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the front of our Enclave, and we're going to need to remove this plastic radiator cover. So go ahead and pop your hood, and to get the cover off, we're going to have a total of 8 push pin style fasteners, just like this one here. So to get these removed, you're just going to take a trim panel tool, or even a flathead screwdriver will work as well. You're going to pry underneath the head of it, and that should pull the fastener out. If the head comes out without the base, no big deal. You can always pry underneath the base and pull them out that way. Then the head will simply just kind of push back into there. So I'll do that same thing to get the remaining push pins completely removed. So now that we have all those push pins removed, we can lift up on our radiator cover and just set it to the side. And then here in the center, along this edge, we're going to have 4 more push pin style fasteners that we need to take out as well. So I'm just going to use that same technique with my trim panel tool or your flathead to pry up the top portion of the fastener and get it removed. Now right here in the corner by the headlight, we're going to have a T20 Torx bit fastener. We need to pull that out. And then I'll simply just repeat that same process over on the other side. Now if we move here to our front wheel well, we're going to have a total of 5 T20 Torx bit screws that we need to pull out. It does help to turn your wheels in. It just gives you some more room to work. And I want to mention too, from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're also going to do on the other side because it'll be set up the same way. And then underneath the front of our vehicle, just ahead of our front tire, we're going to have 2 more T20 Torx bit screws as well. So now what we need to do, if your vehicle has this piece of wheel well trim, we need to separate it from the front of our fascia. It's a little tricky to see, but pretty easy to feel actually. If you reach your hand in behind the wheel well liner, you can kind of feel like a tab almost. And what you can do is kind of push down on that tab and pull this out. And we only need to take it up to where the fender meets the quarter panel. But if I kind of spin it around over here on the other side, you'll be able to get a good look at that tab that we need to push. So here's kind of a better view. When you put your hand in behind there, you're able to easily feel that center portion. So you're going to push down on that, and while you're pushing down on it, you can kind of pull out and it releases itself pretty easily. Now what you can do, if you kind of push your wheel well liner back and look right up at the corner where your fascia meets the quarter panel, you're going to see a fastener that runs up. We need to pull that out, and that's going to be a 7mm screw. We're going to do that on each side. Now moving back underneath the front of our vehicle, just in front of our K-member brace here, we're going to have a 10mm bolt on each side that we're going to pull out. Now what we can do with the next set of hands is actually remove our front fascia. So you want to start at the corner, and you can kind of just pull out on it to release these clips. If some of them are giving you a little bit of problems, what you can do is take a trim tool like this and kind of pry underneath there and help release them. But most times they're going to come right apart, and then we can just carefully start to move our fascia away. And there may be some electrical connectors we need to disconnect. In this case, over here on the driver's side as well as the passenger side, we're going to have a connector just like this. I'm going to push down on the center of it, and that'll release it. Once we have those released, we can take our fascia and set it off to the side somewhere safe. Now with the fascia removed, we're going to move over here to our ambient air temperature sensor, and we're going to remove the bracket here. So that's just held in place with a push pin style fastener, just like the other ones that we removed earlier. So we're going to pry that out. And for the time being, once I get the base out, this will drop down, and we can kind of just push it off to the side and kind of just let it hang there for now. Now we can do, if you look just below the ends of our bumper beam, right here in this area, we could have this kind of like a brace. We need to trim part of it out according to the diagram and the instructions. I went ahead and marked that there. And this is relatively thick metal. It's plastic in some parts, but the majority of it is metal, so I would suggest using a power tool like this cutoff wheel or something similar to that. Just really helps speed things up. So I'm going to go ahead and get that material cut out and removed. So when you get down to this bottom portion here, it's a little tricky because the design, you don't really have a ton of room to get a tool back in there or a cutoff wheel or anything like that. So I think what I'm going to do is just take a pair of snips and kind of just cut it out kind of piece by piece until we get enough material removed to where we can kind of bend this down and break this piece off that we're trying to cut out. May just kind of have to work at it a little bit, but as long as you keep focused, you should have no problems getting it popped out of here. So once this thing is pretty much cut all the way through, you can kind of wiggle it around if you need to and get it to break free. I do suggest wearing gloves though, because this metal can be pretty sharp. And then if we want to, we can always come back with our snips and a file and kind of clean up those edges if that's something that bothers you. But while we're right here, just over here on the driver's side, we're going to have this little air deflector. And what we're going to do is remove this push pin fastener up top here. So get that out of the way. And then we're just going to trim it how the instructions tell us, which just involves cutting a straight line up through here. Now this is pretty thin rubber, so you can use a pair of snips or a utility knife, something like that will get this done. Now on each side of the vehicle, the bolts holding on our bumper beam, we need to remove the two bottom ones. So I'm going to take a 15mm socket and pull those out. Now we can take our base plate and raise it into position. So the way this is going to work is these two holes in the base plate are going to line up with our bumper beam bolts. And we're going to take those factory bolts, put on some red Loctite. You want to use red Loctite on all the hardware. That's going to secure the base plate. And we're just going to get these started on each side, hand tight for now. So once we have our hardware in place and hand tight, I'm just going to come back with a 15mm socket and snug everything down. Now what we can do on each side is we're going to need to enlarge this access hole here. What I'm going to do though, our horn right here, I'm just going to move that down out of the way by taking out this 10mm bolt. That should just kind of give us a little more room to work, make things a little bit easier to see and everything else. We'll just kind of tuck that out of the way for now. Now the instructions actually want us to create a new hole right below this one. However, I don't find that necessary personally, considering we already have a hole that's just about the size that we need above that right out of the factory. So what I'm going to do is just enlarge this one a little bit and get it just big enough that we can fit our hardware inside of there. We're going to use a step style drill bit to get it enlarged. So this is about the size of the hole that you want to make. You just want it big enough to where you can take one of your handle nuts and be able to easily maneuver it in and out of the frame rail. Now if we move to the bottom side, you can see that we're going to have 2 holes in our base plate, and we're going to use those as a guide to drill holes into the bottom of our frame rail. So you're going to take a 17/32 drill bit and open those up. So now what we can do is take our handle nuts, and you want to kind of bend them. You're going to put the nut itself in through that hole, and then that nut is going to line up with the holes on the bottom that we drilled through the base plate. So you want to bend it like that. This is going to line up with the hole in the base plate, so you can come in from underneath with your hex bolt, split lock washer. Don't forget your Loctite. And that's actually going to thread into there. Now just kind of a couple of pointers before you put all this in. Not a bad idea to take the bolt and just kind of thread it into that handle nut just to make sure it's free from any debris and that it will easily get threaded, because getting these going can be a little tricky sometimes. So anything you can do to help you out, definitely want to do. And I also suggest reinforcing the handle here that connects to the nut. So they give you them and they're just tack welded on. And I notice if you bend them wrong way, a lot of times they'll break off and it can really become a headache. So what I like to do is take some JB Weld, and before I put these on, put some of that on there and let it harden up. That way you just have a little bit of extra support. If you have a welder, I'd suggest tacking, putting another couple tacks on there. Just even some glue, something to help keep that a little more secure. But with that being said, I'll go ahead and put this in here, get it lined up, and work on getting our base plate completely secured. The trick is with these, to get them going, is you just want to kind of apply light pressure on the handle nut and the bolt. And a lot of times what will happen, you'll kind of feel that bolt kind of push up into there. You can lightly turn it and get it started. It may take you a couple tries, but after you kind of get the feel for the first one, the others become a lot easier. Now that we have all of our hardware in place, we want to come in with a torque wrench and tighten it all down to the amount specified in our instructions. So once you have everything torqued down, you want to install the safety cables. These are pretty straightforward. You're just going to put them through, put your D-link through this opening here in our base plate, and the cable's going to wrap around your frame rail and just connect it back on the other side. So pretty straightforward, and you'll be sure to want to do this on each side of your vehicle. Now what we can do is reinstall our ambient air temperature sensor. Now if you try to hold that back into its original position, the base plate's going to be in the way. So what I'm going to do is just modify this. Here's the sensor itself. I just pop that out, kind of just push in on these tabs, and it'll pull out of there. I'm going to cut this clean off down here, and then I'm going to use a drill, make the hole the same size as the original, just further up top, probably here in this area. That way we can put the sensor back in and reinstall this into its original position. So here's what our bracket ended up turning out, looking like. Like I said, I just drilled a hole further up and trimmed all that extra off. And I actually had to turn the sensor, this portion, facing this way because the sensor would actually hit our base plate, but not really a big deal. Just measuring the outside air, it'll still give us the same reading. Now what I'll do is go ahead and pop this back into its original position. It is a little tight, but it is manageable. Now at this point it'd be a great time to install some of your other flat towing components, since our fascia is off out of the way and we have all this extra room to work, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to work on our wiring and some of our other components. That's what I would suggest doing as well. Now, if you're not installing those components or you already have them done, what you'd simply do is hold your fascia up and trim it out where it needs to be cut. So your safety chain openings would come through and everything for your wiring and just your base plate in general. So you trim that out and then simply reinstall the fascia once you have that completed. So now when it comes to getting our fascia back on, there's a couple of things that we can do, because we are going to have to either trim this or remove it. That way all of our base plate components can actually go through. So I held it up, and from all the components, to me it makes more sense just to remove this little piece. I think in the end it'll probably give us a cleaner look. However, you could trim it. When you do trim it though, there won't be a whole lot left here. So that's kind of up to you and what you want to do. I'm going to remove it, and the way to do that is we're going to have these little metal keeper tabs almost, I guess you'd call them, and you just take a flathead screwdriver and kind of pry up on them. You'll be able to remove them. So there's a handful of them on the top and bottom. I'm just going to work my way around, get all of them off, and once I have them all removed, this grill insert should just come right off. We can set this to the side, and then we can go ahead and reinstall our front fascia. So to get our fascia reinstalled, you're just going to pop it back on. I did notice in our case we kind of have to put the bottom in first and then kind of swing the top up, if that makes sense. Don't forget to plug in any electrical connectors that you may have had to disconnect. But from there, we're just going to kind of carefully work our fascia back on and get everything lined back up. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Blue Ox base plate kit with removable arms on our 2014 Buick Enclave.